We now come to the Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer.
Mr Speaker, I pay tribute to the police who tracked down the escaped terror suspect from Wandsworth Prison last week. Despite being charged with terrorism and despite being a flight risk, he was not held in a Category A prison. Why not?
Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, I'd like to thank the police and their partners for their efforts to find and arrest Daniel Khalif.
Keir Starmer.
The truth is they're presiding over mayhem in the criminal justice system. Only a few short months ago, Zara Alina's family said ministers had, and this is their words, blood on their hands after probation failures that led to her murder. So it beggars belief that we're back here once again. The Chief Inspector of Prisons said conditions in Wandsworth are so bad it should be shut down. The Chancellor is telling anyone who'll listen that he raised concerns months ago. Probation, school buildings, now prisons. Why does the Prime Minister keep ignoring the warnings until it's too late?
Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, the honourable gentleman with his background should know better that it...
I did say last week, and it will continue this week. Who wants to start this session by leaving? Please do so. I'm happy to help you on your way. Keir Starmer.
Mr Speaker, every week, whatever the topic, he paints this picture as if everything is great and fine out there. It's so at odds with the lived experience in the real world. Let me turn to another serious security concern. Some in this House face sanction, intimidation and threats from the Chinese state. When I asked the Prime Minister on Monday whether the Foreign Secretary raised the specific issue of the alleged spy arrested in March when he visited China a few weeks ago, the Prime Minister would only say that he raised that type of activity, but avoided specifics. So I asked the Prime Minister again, did the Foreign Secretary raise this specific case when he visited China? Yes or no?
Minister.
Mr Speaker, I'll refer to the honourable gentleman to my previous answer where I said very clearly...
Keir Starmer.
Well, that certainly wasn't a yes. And what he says now is totally at odds with the Parliament's Intelligence and Security Committee report of July this year. That set out that the government has no clear strategy when it comes to China, has failed to support the intelligence agencies, and is leaving the UK severely handicapped in managing our future security. This has been raised time and time again. But yet again, the Prime Minister fails to heed the warnings and is now desperately playing catch-up. So will he finally commit to the full audit of UK-China relations, which so many in this House have so long demanded?
Well, Mr Speaker, as always, the Leader of the Opposition is just playing catch-up and hasn't caught up.
Mr Speaker, probation, prison, schools, China, yet again inaction man fails to heed the warnings and then blames everyone else for the consequences. Mr Speaker, on Sunday, the Home Secretary celebrated her first anniversary in post. That is, if you overlook the 6 days she missed when she was deemed a national security risk. In that year, 40,000 people have crossed the Channel on a small boat, and the taxpayer is now spending £6 million a day on hotel bills. He's failing to stop terrorists strolling out of prison, failing to guard Britain against hostile actors. He's completely failing to stop the boats. How can anyone trust him to protect the country?
Well, Mr Speaker, he talks about trust, he talks about action. Just today.
Mr Speaker, every week he comes here protesting that nothing's his fault, trying to convince anyone who's still listening that everything is great. The truth is, the floor fell in for millions of families because of their economic mayhem. The classroom ceilings collapsed because he cut vital school budgets. And now the walls of our national security have been breached because they've ignored repeated warnings. No one voted for these shambles. No one voted for him. So how much more damage do the British public have to put up with before he finally finds the stomach to give them a say?
Mr. Speaker, we are getting on for the British public. Just in the last week,
SNP leader Stephen Flynn.
Mr. Speaker, as someone who spends more money heating their swimming pool than the total value of the UK state pension, I think it's safe to say that the Prime Minister might not be as invested in this topic as some others. But let's afford him the opportunity to clear up any confusion. Will he commit his party, the Conservative Party, to maintaining the state pension triple lock beyond the next general election? Yes or no?
Prime Minister. Oh.
Mr. Speaker, this is the party that introduced the triple lock.
Mr. Speaker, I don't think we heard a yes there. And you'll imagine my shock, my utter surprise that we appear to have consensus once again between the Conservative Party and the Labour Party on this most important of issues, despite the promises that were made to the people of Scotland in 2014 and despite the clear statements from the likes of Gordon Brown that the only way to protect your pension is to remain within the UK. How hollow those words are now. So may I ask the Prime Minister, who does he think will scrap the state pension triple lock first? His government or the Labour Party's government?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, thanks to the actions of this government, pensioners in Scotland are receiving record increases in their state pension.
Click here for angry Jonathan Gullis.